Well, Jim Edwards Jr. has that 57-point championship lead heading into round 10 of the championship. Buxton and Taylor fighting for that second place in the title. It really is going to be a race to relish. Pole position for Rick Pearson with Jim Edwards Jr. alongside of him, then Matt Jackson and Jason Templeman on row 2, ahead of Henry Taylor and Peter Sowerby, David Gibson and Jim Edwards Sr. Daniel Buxton and Bob Smith completing the top 10, 24 laps ahead of them as they unleash the 180 brake horsepower 2-litre Renaults off the start line. And it is absolutely side by side, Rick Pearson and Jim Edwards. And looking back from Jim Edwards' car, that is number 10, Jason Templeman. He's aiming for third place, and Matt Jackson with the yellow car is trying for fourth around the outside of Henry Taylor. Superb stuff. Race leader Rick Pearson into Druid's hairpin. Oh, and the perils of cold tyres. The back end snaps out of line. Beautifully controlled by Rick Pearson. Gets the car back under control, but he's now in third place. And it's Jason Templeman in the race lead. Rick Pearson, number 33, in that second place. He's on a fight back now, as off the track there goes the yellow car of Matt Jackson. And these very slippery, changeable weather conditions really a challenge now for the drivers. But it's Templeman now ahead of Rick Pearson. Jim Edwards trying to make a move back up, and a great battle going on between number 1, David Gibson, going down the inside of Henry Taylor, and Jim Edwards Sr. closing in as well. Looking back from third place man Jim Edwards Jr. into Paddock Hill Bend. Car number 1, David Gibson, closing in. Henry Taylor trying to find a way past Gibson to try and regain that fourth position. And then behind him it's the red and white car of Jim Edwards Sr., then the green car of Peter Sowerby. And Taylor finds his way back past David Gibson, goes up to fourth place, drops back to fifth. But now, can he find the position to counter-attack through Graham Hill Bend? Nope. Let's try now through the left-hander, then the right-hander, McLaren's and Surtees, then into clear ways. Meanwhile now, Jason Templeman looking very secure at the head of the field. And a squeal of tyres behind them. That's the man from Saxmundham in Norfolk, number 77, Bob Smith. Well, he's kept the engine going. He's going to be able to get the car back onto the track at the tail of the field. But taking advantage of all the shenanigans, Jason Templeman opening an advantage now at the head of the field from Rick Pearson, then Jim Edwards Jr. But this is going to mean, as Jim Edwards predicted, that he has got to take this to another round of the championship before he can claim the title in the number 2 car. And closing in on him now comes Henry Taylor, the man from Battle in East Sussex. This is very much his local track, as indeed it is for the man at the head of the field, Rick Pearson. He's closing in on race leader Jason Templeman. This, though, is the battle for third place, and the pressure really is on Jim Edwards. Oh, and Jim Edwards Jr. gets a wheel on the curbs, throws the car sideways, he's on the grass. Huge sideways moment, beautifully controlled, but he is dropping down the field. He was third, he's fourth, fifth, sixth, and he is going to go to the tail of the pack. The championship leader is fighting now to hold on to sixth place, and he's not going to do it. He's down to seventh as Peter Sowerby gets promoted. And at the head of the field, a mistake too by Jason Templeman, and that allows Rick Pearson through into the lead. Into Druid's hairpin now, the number 33 car. The man from London overtakes the man from Newark. But Rick Pearson started his racing career here at Brands Hatch, went to the racing school here at Brands Hatch, has always sworn this is the race he would love to win, and it's looking good for him now, because the number 10 car of Jason Templeman has to find a way past the number 33. But for the man who leads the championship, well, he just simply threw it all away. Let's have another look at that replay. Puts a wheel on the curbs, the tail starts sliding, snaps one way, then the other. But wonderful car control, gets the fishtail back. And there's Dad, Jim Edwards Sr. goes past to demote him to fifth. Now demoting him down to seventh place. Peter Sowerby finds a way past as well at clear ways. Riding with Peter Sowerby now, Jim Edwards Sr. ahead. Oh, and he's going the long way round, and it's side by side ahead. Superb battling there. Henry Taylor, David Gibson in the red and blue car, and it's Gibson who loses out. He's shuffled down to the back of the pack now. And it's a huge traffic jam going on as Sowerby drops back that place. He's back into sixth place. Ahead of him is David Gibson, Jim Edwards Sr. in fourth, Henry Taylor, the black car, at the head of that pack. And Meanwhile, Pearson and Templeman are pulling away, but another great move down the inside there of the number 3 car, Jim Edwards Sr., and it's number 1, David Gibson, then the green car of Peter Sowerby, then Jim Edwards Jr. now at the tail end of that pack. 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th places across the line. Henry Taylor getting a bit of airspace in 3rd place now ahead of them. And again, taking a look down the inside there, the number 1 car of David Gibson. And I think it's found some space. Oh, and it's Jim Edwards Sr. has thrown his car off on the curbs at Paddock Hill Bend. And down the inside goes Peter Sowerby. Now, can he make that move stick on David Gibson? Little wave in the rearview mirror for gentlemanly racing from David Gibson. And that is up into 4th position from Sowerby now. Sowerby heading this pursuing pack. There's number 88, Henry Taylor, in that 3rd place. Pearson and Templeman, race leader in 2nd place. Then it's Taylor, then this man now up into 4th position, Peter Sowerby. Let's have another look at that move there by Sowerby. Really, it all started at Paddock Hill Bend. There's the mistake from Jim Edwards Sr. That spins him off. But Gibson there just, well, he knew there was a gap. Gibson could have closed the door late and maybe had contact, but he didn't do it. And it was nice to see it acknowledged there by Peter Sowerby. Great racing. And this is exactly what happened to Jim Edwards Sr. Viewed from the back of Jim Edwards Jr. car, that could very well have been a nasty family incident. No damage to Jim Edwards Sr. car though. Meanwhile, this is the battle for 2nd place now. Henry Taylor trying to get down the inside of Jason Templeman. Templeman keeping the door very firmly closed on the run up to Druid's hairpin. Good clean racing. Now the black car, Taylor closing in again. And it may just be that Jason Templeman, pushing very hard in the opening stages of this race, has taken the best out of his tyres just a little bit too early. And he is now in defensive mode. He's got a faster car behind him, but by positioning it just right, he can hold up that black car of Henry Taylor. Meanwhile, all the time this is happening, Rick Pearson is extending his advantage. It's still less than a second, but it seems like a country mile in Renault Clio racing. And there is the battle between David Gibson and Jim Edwards Jr. And it's Gibson down the inside of Jim Edwards, holds the tight line down into Paddock Hill Bend. Meanwhile, the battle for 2nd place goes again. Oh, and there's a nudge on the back of Templeman's car now, forced wide. Oh, and some real heavy contact now. But he's still holding on in that 2nd place, has the advantage down to Graham Hill Bend. Turns in across the nose of the black car of Henry Taylor. And Peter Sowerby has the best seat in the house, right behind this battle for 2nd and 3rd places. And he is closing in, and better still, he's closing in on a bunch of back markers as well. As down the inside again, Henry Taylor sells a superb dummy, and through on the inside now of Templeman as well goes Sowerby up into 3rd place. And Templeman shuffled from 2nd down to 4th place, comes across the line behind the green car, and Jason Templeman, initial race leader, will not be happy with that. Riding with Peter Sowerby now, can he do anything about the 2nd place man now? Henry Taylor. Meanwhile, race leader Pearson getting held up by the slower traffic at Druid's hairpin. And slower cars being lapped now gives an opportunity, and it could well be the opportunity here for this 3rd and 4th place battle, because closing in hand over fist comes Jason Templeman, gets his nose up alongside through McLaren's and Surtees and back up into that 3rd place. Now Sowerby's got to fight back. Sowerby goes down the inside now. Oh, there's contact between the 2 cars. Tyre smoke as they power to stop them spinning. Oh, and they're both off, locked together into the gravel trap. Peter Sowerby desperately tries to get his car through the gravel trap, but he is out of the race as well, and sadly the race over for both the drivers. Good news though for Jim Edwards Jr. He is back up into that 3rd place. Behind him, David Gibson, car number 1, and that means Rick Pearson and Henry Taylor are in a class of their own now at the head of the field, and off goes car number 9, Daniel Buxton. Spins his way down from 5th to 8th position, gets his car back onto the track. But action-packed racing every inch of the way. Now let's have a look at this from Peter Sowerby's viewpoint on the replay. Goes down the inside of the number 10 car of Jason Templeman. The 2 cars just locked together, nothing they can do, off into the gravel trap. But I am sure there's going to be long discussions after the race about that one. Meanwhile, Rick Pearson continues to hold the lead from the very determined Henry Taylor. The Londoner and the man from Battle in East Sussex, 1 and 2. well ahead now of Jim Edwards Jr. and number 1, David Gibson. Whoa, and off the track goes Pearson, and that has given Henry Taylor the chance to take the advantage. Of course he does it, and Henry Taylor all of a sudden is the race leader. This is the battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th places. Jim Edwards Jr., David Gibson. Oh, and Jim Edwards Jr. slides off, and I suspect there is oil on the circuit. There's a slide as well. A little bit of contact as David Gibson goes through. And the recovering Matt Jackson closes in as well. So 3rd, 4th and 5th places across the line, absolutely locked together. And Jim Edwards Jr. is not going to give up easily. Matt Jackson squeezes down the inside, a squeal of tyres there as they try to avoid contact, and that's a very wide line indeed, right up over the edge of the curbs for Jim Edwards Jr., and he is going to drop back into 5th place. Gibson now up into 3rd, Matt Jackson 4th, Jim Edwards Jr. now recovering from the slipping and sliding in 5th position. And you can see there the still dampness on the circuit after the rainstorms, and that means that if you get off the racing line, it's very difficult indeed to get the car back. And to add to the hazards, there's a little bit of oil down on the track as well, and it's very slippery. This time it's worked against Gibson. He's slid wide, left the gap. Jackson's got his nose in, and Jackson is running this time wheel to wheel across the line up to Paddock Hill Bend. Jackson's going to have the inside line, theoretically should have the advantage. But if Gibson can keep the speed up, and he's doing it. Oh, and a super move, sells the dummy to Jackson, and Jackson's gone very late on the brakes though. Brilliant stuff, tremendous race. Oh, and Jackson's outbraked himself. Wow, and that tyre wall was very close indeed, but he has lost his 3rd position there. And Jim Edwards Jr. moves back up into 4th. Matt Jackson recovers in 5th, and a return into the race lead by Rick Pearson. Down the inside at Graham Hill Bend on the last lap of the race. Superb stuff. Henry Taylor down into 2nd. Pearson regaining the lead at the very last knockings. But it's not over yet because Henry Taylor's fighting back. This is going to be a classic duel to the checkered flag. But it's going to be the home win for Rick Pearson at his favourite and home circuit. Rick Pearson takes victory. Henry Taylor, though, just a fraction behind. And a brilliant battle for 3rd. David Gibson holds off Jim Edwards Jr. and the recovering Matt Jackson. Absolutely breathtaking and superb stuff, as always, from the Elf Clio Renault Sport UK Cup, and a delighted winner. Confirmation then of just 16 hundredths of a second in it between Rick Pearson and Henry Taylor, with David Gibson a fighting 3rd.
This is my home circuit. This is the one I really wanted. I was born, raised originally in Gravesend and Canterbury. I saw my first motor race here 18 years ago. I saw the last ever Formula 2 race, and it was where I always wanted to come back and ride on that truck, and we've done it today. It's a lifetime's ambition, and I'm absolutely chuffed to pieces.
I got a reasonably good start and got up behind him, well, fairly early on. I thought I'd just sit behind him and reel off a few laps before I attacked him. He ran wide at Graham Hill Bend, and I took the lead there. But basically, I was just, because I knew Buxton wasn't behind me, I knew Edwards had spun off right in front of me, so I thought for the championship, really, I wasn't going to risk everything just to win another race, really. So
the track was difficult, and you know, Jim was missing the turn-in for clearways by about 3 or 4 car widths every time. So after a couple of laps, I thought, well, why not just go in there instead? I hit him, and it bent the steering on the car and really slowed me up. And then people kept coming up behind me, and then people kept spinning off. So I was just sat there thinking, okay, no one wants to overtake, that'll do.
Well, that'll do indeed, particularly for Jim Edwards Jr. in that 4th place. He has now the 58-point lead going into round 11 at Alton Park, where he could well be crowned champion. But this was the man celebrating his home hero victory at Brands Hatch.